Are you wanting to learn how to master your own music? My name is Andrew Aurora, and I help artists and producers bring their creative vision to life through mixing and mastering. And I put out a video like this every single week to help artists and producers. So if you enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notifications bell so that way you never miss a video. And this week, I'm going to be talking about how do you master your music and answer a few questions about mastering. So let's jump right in. So what is mastering? Mastering is the unique skill of preparing your music for playback on all platforms and bringing it up to a competitive quality and volume. So think of mastering as being like icing on a cake, except unlike icing, mastering actually makes the music better and is necessary. Now, I say that just because I actually hate icing on cake, but that's just me. Some people like to master their music themselves, and other people like to send their music off to be mastered by a professional. And many professional mastering engineers have very high quality equipment as well as very high quality rooms that give the best representation of the music and allow them to put out the best possible work. Many of these engineers have spent years becoming masters, so to speak, at bringing your music to a high quality level. And of course, that leads me to my next question that I want to answer, and that is, should you master your own music? So there are typically two schools of thought here. School of thought one is that having a fresh set of ears on the project tends to be better because they haven't heard the song tens of thousands of times and will be able to approach the song with a completely fresh set of ears and a fresh approach. And they may be able to hear things that the producer and the mixer were not able to hear. The second school of thought is the more people that you have on a project, the more likely it is for the original intended vision to get compromised. Now, I don't feel like you have to worry about this one as much if you're sending your music to professional mixers and professional mastering engineers, because they will most likely do a good job no matter what you send them, so long as it's good quality. Because the odds that they'll actually come up with something that's less than ideal is pretty unlikely. Other things to consider in this situation are things like your budget. Do you have the money for a mastering engineer? Would you rather do it yourself? Do you not mind doing it yourself? Would you rather have somebody else do it? All these things are things that are worth taking into consideration before you decide whether or not you want to master your own music. Me personally, I have always mastered my own stuff, and I don't have some super nice studio or some super fancy gear. In fact, for the entirety of my career, I have mixed and mastered everything that I have done in some of the worst environments possible, including walk-in closets, corners of garages, untreated bedrooms, and I've done it all in the box. But despite all that, every client that I've ever worked with has had a very good experience and has left me a very positive review, and I've been able to put out some very high quality work. Now, I'm not going to claim to be the biggest expert on mastering, and I don't want to take anything away from the guys who have spent years of their lives mastering their craft and becoming literal masters at the mastering process. But I think it is important to remember that there's ultimately one thing that matters above all else, and that is, does it sound good? No matter what environment you're in or what equipment you're working with, the biggest and most important tool that you have at your disposal is always going to be your ears. Most people aren't going to be working in fancy studios with fancy gear. In fact, most people are going to be working on music in their bedrooms on a laptop using headphones, and if you can make great sounding music in that environment, then you can make great sounding music anywhere. So ultimately, should you master your own music? In my opinion, I think that if you feel confident in your abilities to put out a good product and you know that you can do a good job, then I don't see anything wrong with it. However, if you do have the budget to hire a specialist and don't mind giving that part of the process off to someone else, then I definitely think it's a good idea. So what if you do decide to master your own music? So I recommend that if you want to master your own music and you don't have a lot of money, I do recommend investing in some decent mastering software such as the FabFilter plugins or things like Ozone 10. So these will run you a few $100s depending on what you get, but it will definitely be worth it. And though I think that great engineers can make things sound good regardless of what equipment they have available, I also think that stock plugins alone usually don't provide you all the tools that you need to produce the highest quality masters. And I do think that investing in some mastering software or gear is definitely one area that is worth investing a little bit of money. However, some people think that you need analog gear to get a good master, and I actually had somebody reach out to me one time who asked me if I was in the box or if I used mastering hardware, and I told them that I am all in the box, and they decided they did not want to work with me, which I think is kind of silly because at the end of the day, the most important thing you have is your ears, and I could have done an incredible job for him, but hey, you know, his money, his music, his choice, right? Though analog gear is nice to have, there is no reason that you can't get a good master inside the box. And in fact, some of the best engineers in the world do everything in the box, so there is no need to get discouraged if you don't have analog gear. There are also a lot of advantages to mastering in the box, such as being able to get louder masters and being able to do easier recalls. And I personally think anyone who frowns on in-the-box mastering really just needs to get their priorities straight, because quite frankly, it's more about the engineer than it is the gear. That being said, if you want to master your own music and you don't have a lot of money or a nice studio, I think it's very possible to get good at mastering with enough practice. And with all that said, let's jump right into mastering a song, so that way I can give you guys an actual walkthrough of mastering a song the way that I would do it. Now, real quick, if you're enjoying this video, I wanted to mention my free resource, the 12 things that you need to be a beast at mixing and mastering. I put this free resource together so that way you would have a clear guide on what I personally believe are the 12 most important things for you to focus on as a mixing and a mastering engineer. I know when you get started that there are a lot of things that you want to focus your attention on, and sometimes it can be very daunting knowing where to start, and I wanted to give you guys a very clear guide on where you should start focusing your attention, as well as I provided a bunch of resources within this resource that will help you guys develop a very strong foundation for your mixing and mastering journey, such as some of my favorite books and such as one of my favorite tools to really refining your ear training and getting you guys started with mixing and mastering, so that way you guys can have a strong foundation and not spend years trying to figure out the process. And if you want to download this free resource, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of this video. Now let's get on to mastering that song.
Yo, what is going on, guys? I'm back here with a master that I'm going to do for you guys. This is going to be kind of a quick master. I'm not going to try to take super long on this, but I also want to be able to give you guys some good information, some valuable information, and allow you guys to actually see me master a song. You know, this isn't going to be like a 1 hour long master or whatever, but this is going to be like a quick run through, and I have mastered this song before, so I kind of know what I want to do with this song. And so the song that we're working with is a song called From the Deep by Jesper Sorensen, and this is a client of mine. I mastered this song for him about maybe a month and a half ago, and this is a cool little electronic song. I really enjoyed it, and it's very well produced, which also makes your job mastering way easier. But I'm going to let you guys hear that real quick, and then we're going to jump right into the mastering. Cool, so you guys kind of get the gist from those few seconds of hearing the song. This is a pretty cool song, very cinematic, and a lot of fun to master. So let's just jump right into the master. Cool, so first thing I want to do, come up here, and I usually start every master by putting an EQ in the front, just in case I need it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this to linear phase, because linear phase is going to keep me from being very destructive to the phase of the master, which when you're mastering, you really want to be careful to not do a bunch of damage to the phase, or you'll screw up the whole song. However, with linear phase, you can introduce pre-ringing if you go a little crazy on your EQ, but I am going to be pretty subtle. We're not making huge moves, and that is one of the biggest tricks to mastering, is not necessarily doing huge moves if you don't have to. Ideally, you're getting a good song that's been well produced, and all you're doing is adding the final layer, that last little bit of icing to the cake to make the song refined. Now, I remember one issue I had with this song, which I want to take care of right now, is random low-end spikes that are kind of distracting. So let me find one of those, and let me tame that with this EQ. I know that frequency gets a little annoying in this song. It'll pop out a little bit and you'll just hear it kind of above all else. It's distracting. So I wanted to bring that down just a little bit. Just wanted to be really subtle with it. And in fact, I'm going to switch this to 6 so I can do a little bit more fine adjustments. And we got a little bit of dynamic EQ going on here so I can compress some of that low end stuff that is getting a little too aggressive. And let's narrow that down just a little bit. Cool, so that smoothed it out. That's one spot where the low end really pops out. Let me see if I can find another spot. Okay, so that tamed it just a little bit. Next thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of my favorite master bus compressor, and this is the JW Bus Glue Mix. This is one of my favorite compressors. This is modeled after an SSL compressor, and what you have here is it's kind of looks like a limiter, right? But it's also got a button down here called No Small Time, and it's also got 3 transformers, which I'm going to be honest, I usually can't tell much of a difference with these transformers, but they are supposed to add a slightly different sound to it. I really, like I said, can't tell much of a difference, but yeah, this is a pretty cool compressor, and what I want to do here is just add a little bit of glue to the overall mix. And the reason I wanted to add this Pro Q3, bringing down some of those lows before the compressor, is because I didn't want the compressor to react as hard to those low frequencies. So let's just compress this a little bit, add a little bit of glue, and I'll show you what this No Small Time button does. It's really cool. It makes everything sound really nice. Also, mind you, the volumes for this song might change as I'm mixing it. I'll try to give you guys a warning before I crank it up so that way you guys can adjust accordingly and I don't blow your ears out. Coming up in volume a little bit. So I'm sure you guys could hear the difference with that No Small Time button. It just really adds a little bit of just good, nice ear candy. I think it adds a little bit of mid-side EQ that just kind of widens the sound a little bit, adds a nice little sheen over the sound, and it's just a magic button, man. It makes the song sound a lot better. So the next thing I want to do here is I want to add one of my favorite plugins called DF Excite. And this plugin is usually meant for drums, like it was designed for drums, but it sounds really good on pretty much everything. And what I did there was I just loaded up a preset where I have the mix knob turned to 20 on pretty much all these knobs. And what this plugin does, it adds a nice little bit of saturation that doesn't butcher the dynamics of the sound. And I have it switched here to drum group, drum room mode because that sounds the best on buses. As opposed to, like a rock kick, indie kick, preset. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start kind of dialing in the sound with DF Excite and add some nice little saturation to the overall sound. Now that definitely added quite a bit of energy to the sound. I really like what we have going on there with DF Excite. Something I am hearing is a little bit of low end, like woo, 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 woo sound, and I don't really like that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a little bit of multi-band compression. Slow attack, kind of a slow release. So just taming that low end a little bit more, just keeping it kind of under control. Next thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of max bass. So what this will do is it'll add a little bit of harmonics to the low end of the song, which sounds nice and translates better on phone speakers and whatnot. So let's just try some max bass. And one thing I'm going to do here, just so I can hear this a little better, is I'm going to add another EQ. And just going to switch this to linear phase. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bring this down to where I can only hear the lows. And then we're going to hear what max bass is doing to the sound. Cool. So that's pretty subtle. It's not doing, a whole lot, but what it did do is add a little bit of harmonics to the low end, which I like. And now we're just going to get rid of that Pro Q3. And the next thing I want to add now is I want to add some Ozone 10. And what I'm going to do with Ozone 10 is we're going to add the final bit of gloss to this overall sound. So let's start with the EQ. That added a nice little bit of air to the song. Let's see if we can add a little bit more thickness in the mid-range. I like that filled it out a little bit more. It also made some of those vocals come out a little bit more and balanced out with some of the top end that I added. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is I want to add an exciter. And I love this thing because it sounds really cool. It adds a nice bit of, excitement to the overall mix. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 4 bands here for the different frequency spectrums. And we're going to set these the way that I like to have them set. So I got, 200 hertz and below is this band. We've got about 200 hertz to 2K, this band, which is pretty much all the mid-range. We've got 2K to 8K is this one, and 8K and beyond is this one for that high-end sizzle. And I've already done this before, so I know which ones I liked the best for all these, and I preferred the tube for these two up top, and I preferred the triode for these ones on bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the low end, or actually, we're not going to start with the low end. We're going to start with the mid-range because I like to breathe a little bit of life into the mid-range and then kind of build around that, because I think a lot of people really neglect the mid-range when they're mixing and when they're mastering, but the mid-range is where all the energy and all the life is in a mix. So I want to bring a little bit of excitement to the mid-range and then kind of build around that mid-range. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the mix down to about 50, and we're going to start adding a little bit of excitement. Now that's too much, it's distorting. So I think that sounds like a good amount. Next, I want to do the lows. And you got to be gentle with the lows because the low end frequencies can get messed up. I think that subtle amount sounds pretty good. Now let's check that in context with everything else. I do think we added just a little bit too much here, so let's just pull this back just a little bit. You hear how in that section when I take the exciter off and then add it back on, how that mid-range, that kind of like synth part pops out a bit more and the whole song's a bit more full. Definitely has some more life added to it. So now let's go mess with the upper portion of the frequency spectrum. Definitely don't want to go too much because you'll have a lot of hiss and static. All right, that sounds like it's doing a little bit. Let's check it now. Adds a little bit more attack to the overall song, and now let's go see if we can add a little bit of sizzle. So that's super subtle, but let's just check it next to everything else. You notice the difference with the exciter on and off. It just breathes so much more life into the overall song. Now, from here, what I want to do is I want to add just a little bit of dynamic EQ. And I want to do this because now I feel like there is just a touch too much aggressiveness in the top end portion after adding that exciter. So we just want to try to control that just a little bit. There, that keeps those hi-hats a little bit more tame, a little bit more under control. And now from here, what I'm going to do is I want to add a little bit of imager. And I've already done this song before, and I know that I don't really want to add any width anywhere. I just want to narrow the lows just a little bit. And this is a multi-band widener. So all I really want to do is I want to come in here and I want to just kind of narrow this section down and just tighten up the lows a little bit. Just want it to be super subtle. And then from here, now we're going to do some maximizer. We're going to do some limiting, and this is where the song is going to get a little bit louder. So what I'm going to do is bring my output ceiling to -1, so that way we don't have any peaks that go over unity. And then I'm going to come down here to IRC4, and I've been experimenting with these, trying to figure out which one I like best, but we're just going to start with the modern one. And we're going to start limiting this song. So the volume is going to get louder here in a second, so just be aware so I don't blow out your ears. And another thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of clipper, and this is going to bring everything a little bit more up in your face, but it's also going to allow us to limit a little bit harder and get the song a little bit louder. I think clipping into a limiter is pretty much a method that works pretty much every time to make a song sound better. So, and even though this is on the right side, it actually comes before this limiter. I don't know why they did it that way, but they did it that way. So yeah. Cool. So that is getting pretty close to being mastered. Obviously, this isn't like, perfect, right? If I was doing this for real and about to send it to the artist, I'd probably go take a little ear break, come back, check it out again. But pretty much what I've done here, I walked you guys through step by step. But just to give you guys a brief rundown on what I did, I felt like, some lows needed to be tamed. So I did a little bit of EQ before going into the compressor. So the compressor didn't react as much to the lows. Did a little bit of compression, added my no small time button, which adds a little bit of nice mid-side EQ and a good sound, a good nice little shimmer to the overall mix. Did a little bit of DF Excite to add some nice saturation and excitement to the mix. Did a little bit of taming of the lows here on the multi-band compression. Then added max bass after that to add a little bit of harmonics to the low end. And then we went all in on Ozone 10, where we did a little bit of EQ here to give a little bit more life into the mid-range, a little bit of highs to give it a little bit of air. Did some exciter to breathe some life into the overall mix. Did a little bit of dynamic EQ to tame some of those cymbals that popped out when we added our exciter. And then I did a little bit of imager, not even to widen the mix, but to narrow the lows just a little bit, make them a little more mono. And then we added some maximizer and got it at a pretty good level. And I think, let's check the volume real quick. Cool, so we ended up around minus 7.5 LUFS, which is a great volume and will make an artist pretty happy if you send it to them at that level. Most artists I've sent it to that is at that level, they're pretty content with the volume. But yeah, that is a kind of a brief rundown on how to master a song. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you want your song to be featured on my channel, then be sure to fill out a form. I'll leave a link in the description of this video that'll link you over to my website where you can fill out an application to work with me and have your song featured on the channel, where I can teach not only you but the rest of my audience how to mix and master your music. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on the video, leave me a comment letting me know if you have any questions that I can help answer. And of course, you guys can always reach me on my socials. If you have any questions, you can always DM me. And of course, be sure to share this video with somebody who you feel like it can help. And I will see you guys next week. Peace.